Thanks so much, everybody.
All right. Yeah, give it up for the amazing Open Act Creek Street Collective. Some chilled electronic beats that keep us cool on this hot day. All right. Ooh. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Sinaiaks. We honor and respect the Sinaiaks past, present, future. We're committed to co-creating with their enduring connection to this land. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kootenay Resilience Festival. I'm Jean-Marc from the Kootenay Lake Innovation Center, and my movement partners, Mitch from the Kootenay Mountain Culture Group, Sharissa from the Langham Cultural Center, and Nish right here from Shoreline Building Performance. We got Brian here from the Langham. Thank you so much. First and foremost, we'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to the brave firefighters flying around Kootenay Lake, North Kootenay Lake, Slocan, and Nelson. Your tireless efforts, yes, in battling the wildfires have just started and will continue for years to come is nothing short of heroic, and we're immensely grateful for your dedication and sacrifice. Thank you. So these wildfires and the pressing need for climate resilience are precisely why we've come together for this summer-long experimental festival. This Kootenay Resilience Festival is not just an event, but a movement towards a more resilient and regenerative future. So we're thrilled to have you here in person and online. Thank you so much for joining us online if you can't make it. It's not just an event, but a movement towards our more resilient and regenerative future. We're coming here together to explore, discuss, and celebrate the incredible strides being made in our community and bioregion towards food security, local energy, housing innovation, and shared mobility. But our focus today is the Energy Expo. It's engaging with the bioregion's best energy experts. They have solutions that directly impact our lives and our community's future. Alongside food, housing, and mobility, we aim to significantly reduce the cost of living and ensure climate resilience for everyone in our bioregion and beyond. So food security ensures that every member of our community has access to local, nutritious, and affordable food regardless of economic circumstances. Localized energy will guarantee our homes, businesses, and people remain safe and secure, ensuring growth, a reduction of costs, and environmental impact. Housing innovation will provide low-cost and climate-resilient living options that meet the need of all residents. And finally, shared mobility will offer efficient, cost-effective transportation solutions connecting our communities in more accessible and wonderful ways. Especially Steve from BC Transit, thank you for driving the bus. Yeah, buddy. These first events are planting a garden for the first time, so bear with us as we experiment, just like tweaking your solar panel to harvest the max amount of power. It's an impact festival, so modeled after others around the world where conferences are smashed together with music and the beautiful Kootenay creatives in a festival for exciting action. So we're delighted to present an amazing lineup of speakers today and musicians who will share their knowledge, experience, and creative with us. Our goal is to dive deep into these important issues, capture all proposed solutions, and invite our communities into ongoing engagement online. Woo! Woo! So this way, the most critical solutions will receive the necessary support to thrive. I know you will have questions on how this happens, so please bear with us as we unfold this journey together. Here's the format for the rest of the show. Panel 1 is next at 30 minutes. We're going to have Rick Lochtenberg, from Nelson City Councilor and Technology Developer. He's going to moderate. After that, we're going to have another hour of music from Railtown, and then a second panel by Nicole Charlwood from the Green Party. And then we're going to have a QA from Niche. And big love to all of our speakers that have showed up today, including Rick, Scott, Jim, Bruce, Don, Hal, Jaden, Mikhail, and everybody else for showing up and sharing with us your expertise. So once you see them on stage, make sure you go and talk to them. Most importantly, huge thanks to our sponsors, Creative BC, Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism, Kootenay Co-op, Nelson Credit Union, Boast.ai, The Langham, Kootenay Lake Innovation Center, Mountain Culture Group, and of course, your generous donation. There's a great little jar that Brian's going to hand out here. If you can pitch in any which way you can, hit them up as we go along. We'd also like to give great thanks to our food vendors, Future Soul Foods, Kick It Ash over there. Get some food in you. And check out our engagement booth at the end here. At any point, just get into the engagement booth and we'll talk about how you can engage deeply. And a huge thanks to Kootenay Mountain Culture, Dave Ronald, All Ears Production. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Let's get on. I'd like to introduce Rick, who's going to introduce our first panel. If our first panel speakers can come up. Woo!
Thanks, Jean-Marc. It's an absolute thrill to be here, and I'm not going to waste any time because we've got a half hour and a really great group of guys and a really important topic. So we've got Rick Tiefenbach. Rick? Which one's Rick? There we are. So Rick Tiefenbach is from Infinity Solar Group. And Rick, I'm going to get you to explain. I'm going to get each of you to give, as a part of your 2 minutes, an introduction to yourself too. So I'm not going to waste time going on a big introduction. We've also got Scott Spencer from Nelson Hydro. Scott, come on up. Jim Jacobson from Energy Economics Solar. And Bruce Wilson from Thor Hydrogen. Now I'm not quite sure, are we going to just, how are we going to do this? Where's JM? Can we want to make sure everybody can see you. So how about, yeah, maybe we'll do that. Okay, I'll start just so you guys know who I am, and we're gonna have them come just up front here. So, yeah, that'll be good. Dancing around that. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Okay, so as JM said, my name is Rick Lochtenberg. I'm a city councilor in Nelson. I'm also the chair of the Community Energy Association, which is a provincial and expanding organization that helps municipalities, local governments in particular, enact the transition to low carbon resilient. So that means reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as well as broadening and hardening and improving their energy systems. So I am particularly interested to hear from these guys today, and then we'll get into some questions. And if you've got something that really catches your attention, just hold on to it. We may be able to loop you in, but definitely grab them after this and ask them directly. So we're going to start with, I think we're going to start with Rick. He's right there.
I got told to come over here.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, yeah, my name is Rick Tiefenbach. I'm here with Infinity Solar. Our head office is in Invermere. We also have an office in Calgary, and then a couple of us work from home down in Castlegar. So we do mostly grid-tied installations throughout the Kootenays, west and east, as well as the Calgary area. So we specialize grid tied, usually kind of the 4 kilowatt and above. We do larger commercial installations in the, the 50 to 100 kilowatts, depending on the jurisdiction, as we've talked about. So we've been around for about 6 years now. We have mostly our own crew. We have a crew down in Trail that does a lot of our West Kootenay installations, and we're just happy to see the intake in solar adoption picking up here in British Columbia, and look forward to your questions. And that's, I don't know, kind of all we got to say. So thanks for having us out, and look forward to hearing and meeting a bunch of you.
Okay, thanks very much. My name is Scott Spencer. I'm the general manager for Nelson Hydro. And those of you who may not be familiar with Nelson Hydro, we're one of only 5 municipal utilities in the province of British Columbia. We're also unique in that we have our own generating plant, a 16 megawatt facility at Bonington Falls, and we manage our own transmission and distribution. We also service customers outside of the municipal boundaries, so we have about 11,000 customers from Bonington all the way to Coffee Creek in Nelson. So, or Coffee Creek on the way between Nelson and Kaslo. So some of the things that I think are relevant to this event today is in 2012, Nelson Hydro implemented a net metering program to allow customers to install solar or any kind of own generation onto our grid, and we basically act as a battery. So we buy the power, and if you need it in the wintertime or other times when you don't have enough generation for yourself, you take it back at the same rate. Coming off of that, in 2012, we established the first energy advisory organization called EcoSave for the utility. And that provides services to the customers throughout the region. So it was expanded in 2019 to include all regional district of Central Kootenay customers who are interested in energy efficiency, rebates, home retrofits. We also have an e-bike loan program through the City of Nelson for City of Nelson residents. So EcoSave is a big part of that. And one of the initiatives that they started early on was the community solar garden. So that was kind of came out of engaging with the community, and people who didn't own their own homes just had they were renters, or perhaps lived in Blewett where they never got any sun, or their roofs were just not suitable for installing solar, or didn't have any micro hydro opportunities. And so people were able to buy into our solar garden. So we have a 60 kilowatt solar garden that Nelson Hydro manages. Customers own the panels, and at the end of the year they get a credit for the generation based on the number of panels that they own from that facility. As a utility, we're also engaged in always looking for new capacity. That's one of the biggest issues worldwide. Certainly, BC Hydro has signaled that BC will be short on power by 2028 unless we add capacity. They have calls for power going on throughout the province. Nelson Hydro is also looking for opportunities to add capacity. We have no opportunity to increase generation on the Kootenay River. All the water licenses are taken. So we're also looking at micro hydro, small hydro, pico hydro. We've looked at solar, so we actively using the solar garden as a pilot project to understand utility scale solar. We know that there's no wind regime in this area that is worthwhile tapping into. We'd love to get into geothermal, but that's a very expensive piece to type of, when I talk about geothermal, I'm talking about deep geothermal wells, but that's very expensive to start off with. So we're looking into all these things. Recently we were also trying to, instead of building capacity, trying to spread out that load a little bit. So battery energy storage is of interest to us. We weren't able to make a business case to make that to work at this time. The costs are still too high relative to the benefits, but in the future that may shift. With the technology, one of the things we're very interested in as AI improves and other things, there's lots of utilities around the globe that are experimenting with distributed storage and being able to engage with customers to manage the load on a demand side perspective. So those are things that we think are coming. You need to have advanced metering in order to be able to do that, but that's something that we're actively looking at to try and improve the utility. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Hello, my name's Jim Jacobson. I'm one of the co-founders of Energy Economics. We're a design and build solar company. We have 15 employees right now, and we're located in Cranbrook, Creston, Kelowna, Vernon, and Vancouver, and we install across the province. Thanks to Jean-Marc for putting this on. Exciting to be part of this discussion. Looking forward to seeing how the comments and feedback work over the next little while. I guess for the purposes of today, I was going to talk a little bit about the art of the microgrid. So one of our specialties, we're a gold certified Solarc installer, the only one in Canada. And the Solarc is a hybrid solar generator. It works in conjunction with solar plus batteries plus either energy storage, energy production systems. So when we're looking at a microgrid, we'll talk it either can be in front of the meter or behind the meter. So typically when we're working with either a household owner or a business or even a small community such as Jean-Marc is going to build, shameless plug, check out his website. But what we're looking at is assessing how much energy that local community requires. And then we look at what are the best ways to produce that energy. So one of the ways is we say, okay, based on location, solar exposure, how much solar can we put in? Then what do we do with that solar power, and what do we do when there isn't enough sunshine? So we want battery storage. So the solar works, it feeds whatever you're using. When there's not enough solar power, you need something else. So that something else can be in the form of batteries. They could be gel batteries, lithium batteries. There's lots of others coming down the pipe, and there's hydrogen and a few others that people might touch on today. But we're looking at that total consumption and how do we make that work 365 days of the year and for a long time, so 10, 15 years of guaranteed production. And so as we're looking at this, we know that microgrids, they're resilient, they save, over time, they save energy, they save needing to build another dam, for example, because we can now generate power by ourselves. Nelson Hydro isn't there yet, but BC Hydro has just launched a new program where they're actually paying people to install solar, not just on their house, but at the small business and medium-sized businesses as well as industrial, because they recognize that we don't have enough energy to meet peak demands. So the easiest way and the shortest time frame and the most affordable way is to have asset owners do it themselves. Put solar and other solar, wind, whatever that is the best solution for them, is put that on their buildings, produce their own power. They have power when they need it, and then they can actually feed back to the grid when peak demand requires. So I hope we have some opportunities to discuss and ask questions and answer questions, and I'll pass it over. Bruce?
Bruce. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. Thanks to Jean-Marc and all the organizers today. It's great to be in Kaslo, as always. I'm Bruce Wilson, based in Kimberley. I wear a number of hats, so let me go back a little bit and tell you a bit about my origins. Born and raised in Scotland, I joined the oil industry, oil and gas industry, out of university. I worked in the oil and gas industry for 30 plus years. And then I left it to take action on climate change as I realized the harms that we were doing to the planet, as I realized that time was running short. I had to take my own direct action on that, and that's involved a number of things. So I wanted to share that. It's maybe not a popular kind of place to come from, but I have very definite perspectives on that have helped me going forward. One of the first things I did, I chaired the board of an organization called Iron and Earth, and Iron and Earth's mission is to help communities that are and workers that are connected to the oil and gas industry to realize the potential of what they can do, the skills that they have that they can bring to the energy transition. It's really important. We have a lot of tremendously skilled people and a lot of people who've built pride and culture in that industry who need our help to change, to realize that the time is urgent, that we need to take action now, and what can they bring to that? And the answer is a huge amount. And so with Iron and Earth, we're facilitating programs to help them train and in various areas. One growing area is energy storage. You don't get to be resilient if you're generating energy from solar and wind without energy storage. So I got into the energy storage side from the point of view of hydrogen, making green hydrogen through the electrolysis of water, using that to store energy for long duration so that you can actually take facilities through the winter with that. So I founded Thor Hydrogen to look at that specific challenge. I also consult with the European Marine Energy Centre, which is looking at tidal energy from all the tidal rips around the islands. Wonderful for Haida Gwaii and other places too. So a lot of relevance to Canada. Wind power, and then turning all of that into hydrogen and into other green chemicals. So looking at it from a number of angles. But what I want to talk today about specifically is resilience and community resilience and the localization that we need to foster. Economic resilience and climate resilience go hand in hand. We not only have the solutions to deal with climate change, we have the ability to thrive through climate change, through this transition. And I think that's something that we need to place greater emphasis on. And so through the Lighthouse Development Cooperative, which is a group that got together, small companies getting together and punching above their weight because of that, we want to create community-owned commercial developments that are based on all the technology that we've got. The energy generation, the energy efficiency, the district heating. The whole idea is to decentralize everything. If we decentralize and distribute energy, we will naturally gravitate towards better resilience. And we do that in a way that we partner with the communities to lift everybody. That rising tide will lift all boats, creating jobs, creating skills, creating pride in the community. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, and I want to hear your voice on that and what you think about that, how we get there. We have to build stuff. We need the engines of our change. How do we get to that? Where do we start? What do we prioritize? Really about the guys up here on the stage, we all know the solutions, but we need to couple that to the will of the people to actually make it happen. And it's the most vulnerable people amongst us who are going to suffer greatly from this. So let's make it happen for them, for all of us. Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to ask the four panelists to come forward, and we're gonna do a bit of a lightning round here. So we're going to try to keep our answers pretty short and then pass it so we get everybody sort of reacting to each other and the same questions. Can everybody see them okay, or should we try to get you a little bit more? Come on over a bit more, Rick. How about you go here? I'll move this over here. All right. And I'm going to hand this to you. You guys will hand that mic around. I'll use this one. Oh, that's okay. I'd like to start by building off of what Bruce was saying about what's the community role in resilience. And, a lot of this, the Resilience Festival, especially for Kaslo and the Kootenays, is unique to this area. We've got ample hydro, for example, but that's tied into a larger grid, and it would be interesting to hear your perspectives on what resilience means specifically for this region. And we'll start with that, and then we'll build on it on that question. Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think as we've talked about, kind of bringing in those other ways of generating electricity is really what the area needs, as we're seeing less and less precipitation in the area, more and more drought. BC Hydro and the province as a whole was a net importer of electricity the last couple of years, so we're generating what we can with hydro, but then we're buying electricity from other parts of the country that are burning now, natural gas and coal. So to be able to build up some of that generation that we have on our own, whether it's solar or another, more hydro, where we can, take some of the pressure off the hydro dams, and maybe, hopefully we're not building any more, but we're seeing kind of how Site C went. Just being able to have that on your own house, so you're generating your own electricity and not worrying about the fires if the grids go down and that type of thing.
Yeah, well, so Jim, just to take that, you mentioned Site C, you mentioned hydro. Hydro tends to be, especially the large scale hydro, tends to be, it has its own impact. We don't, once it's up and operating, we tend to look at it as a low impact source of energy, but getting there is difficult. And so maybe we can talk about, again, localizing it here. What are some of the solutions where we're balancing both the need to continue to, develop new generation, while at the same time trying to minimize the impacts that these projects can have? And so and that pivots to solar. Solar, is that viable in this area? If so, what does that look like, and how can we marry that with some more, better storage solutions and so on? So, Rick, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, not Rick. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the first part was talking about resilience, and I think the idea of as a solar guy, the idea of resilience is that the homeowner is owning and producing their own power. So that's creating resilience for the household. But as people have their own power, they're behind the meter, so it's on their house, on their roof, they're using that energy. Solar energy circumvents through the breaker panels, so you always consume the solar first. If you're producing more than you need, that's when it goes out to the grid, and the utility corporation can then use that to offset their demand that they have. So again, if you own your own power and you're still connected to the grid, you're actually building resilience for the utility as well. Mm-hmm. So can you rephrase your second part of that?
No, I think you captured, that was great, and let's pass it on to Scott, because Scott's heard from me at Nelson City Council. We're the governance of Nelson Hydro, so I spent a lot of time hassling Scott about these questions. But Scott, pivoting and talking about the balance of hydro, which seems so natural here, and you mentioned new hydro projects would be great, and we've talked about how to, where can we build them without creating necessarily the environmental impacts that sometimes accompany hydro, and then balancing in solar and storage solutions as well. How does that mix fit for this area?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. That's a great question, and it's really something that we've struggled with as a utility, looking at each of the different projects. We from an economic perspective, we look at the levelized cost of the energy. So how much is it going to cost over the lifetime, and compare that to the amount of the cost of buying it from Fortis BC, who is connected to us in the grid, who are from Nelson Hydro's perspective, literally generating clean green power from the hydroelectric, the heritage hydro that exists on the other side of the river. So we're always looking at, well, where's the easy sort of like low cost energy? And we keep coming back that the cheapest energy is the energy that you're not using. And from a resilience perspective, and from the ability for a community perspective of like, what can I do? The average person can't, build a new dam, or, many people, when you talk about the vulnerable populations, they're not looking at putting solar on their roof, they're not able to do things. But what every one of us can do is look at our consumption, and it's not just how much total energy we're consuming, but also when we consume that. Because when we start talking, I mentioned earlier about capacity, we're going to be short on capacity in the province by 2028, and so all the utilities are looking at how can we increase that capacity to meet the predicted demand. Well, that capacity is designed right now to meet the peak. So at 6 p.m. on the coldest day of the year for Nelson Hydro. In some other areas, the peak is actually in the summer when everybody's got their air conditioning on. And like today would probably be a pretty good example of that, where there's a lot of consumption. But if people can shift that load, even just voluntarily, and utilities are looking at ways to incentivize that, but voluntarily, if people can choose not to run their dishwasher or take a shower or do their dishes or their laundry during those peak hours between 5 and 7 p.m., that means that we don't have to build more capacity. If we can spread it out over the 24-hour period, the same amount of energy, we have much less capacity. So from a resilience perspective, that's where I think we should be putting our money in.
Yeah, thank you. Bruce, same question. I think you pivot off of that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to take it back to first principles, and then I'll come to that if I can, because resilience at its most intrinsic, it lies at the intersection between climate mitigation and climate adaptation. It's that sense that we are too late. We are late to the game on mitigation, first of all, in terms of limiting the amount of carbon that goes into the air. And adaptation is kind of the idea of build a bunker in New Zealand or something like that. But we all know that's patently ridiculous because the solution is community-based and everybody pulling together. So it's adaptation, which is smart solutions that we need to create. And it's around localization, as I said. It's around identifying things like supply chain. The amount of leakage, if you like, that goes out of a particular region. It might be paying for gasoline. Well, let's charge our electric vehicles and make sure that that money stays here, first of all. Food security. Now, we're not going to grow 100% of food around here, but if we learn to grow 10 or 15%, then we can build on these kind of things. And again, this is a supply chain thing. The core of that is energy, but energy is only the beginning. It's what you do with the energy. It's the intelligent things that you do. Actually, it's not only energy is not the beginning. Efficiency, the kilowatt hour that you don't have to generate, is the best one, absolutely. So it's a question of priorities, first of all. The most important thing that we can do, as I said, is keep people safe, and that is to the vulnerabilities of climate-related extreme weather events. So if we want to start somewhere that is really great, it's in community hubs that are intrinsically resilient. Why? Because they have air filtration, they have cooling, they generate their own energy, they have their own comms. You can plug your electric vehicles back into those locations. They have district heating, they have heat storage, and what they do is they become beacons, if you like, for what you can do. Once you have that centralized opportunity there, and you feed all the technology into it, and you educate people about what they can do, that's where you get to the point of understanding. As far as additional capacity, every building, every roof has to be a substrate for generating energy. We need to create virtual power plants, first of all. We have the opportunity to do that. We've got Great Lakes where floating solar is absolutely an option, and that's the kind of things that we need to bring to the table straight away.
Great. And Jim, just give me a time check. 5 minutes. Okay. So we're going to go try to get each of you for 1 minute each. And I think we'd like to give us, our audience, something to take home here. What is something that they can do? Assuming we all recognize the challenge of resilience, we know that it's a part of conservation. It's also part of generation. The solution has to have both. What are some high impact things that this audience right here can start engaging with and start doing today? It could be anything. It could be advocating for bigger change at a policy level, or it's something personal. Bruce, we'll start with you.
something personal. Know how much power you consume. How much energy do you consume? Do you look at your bills, and do you look at that? Everybody can look at a chart or make an Excel little spreadsheet of what you use, and know what the different tiers are. And you talk about voluntarily shifting. Well, when it affects your pocketbook, when it affects the bottom line, yeah, shift it. Start to do some smart things first of all. Then pay attention to how well your home is insulated. Shade in the summer too, and so forth. Heat pumps, the first way to go. These things are ultra efficient. So look at the grants and get somebody to help you. We need help for people to understand what is available. So it's starting from the ground up and building to a level of awareness that allows you to help other people. Put your own mask on first before you help somebody else with theirs, and then we will get there. So this is community mobilization. Those of us who are enabled, let's enable other people first of all.
Great, excellent advice, Bruce, and I'll echo that from a utility perspective. There's lots of programs and rebates that are out there. Many of them income qualified to help people with trying to retrofit their home or improve their windows or reduce their energy consumption overall through heat pumps and other things like that. So there are programs out there. The province and the federal government are sponsoring many of those to really, because everyone is recognizing that that's a really engaged way to resolve some of the issues that we've got. And from a personal perspective, knowing your energy consumption, but just being proactive and remembering that, okay, it's dinner time. Let's turn the heat down for a little while. Let's be conscious of it. Educate your children. The next generation are going to be the ones that are going to be impacted the most by our decisions right now. So make sure that they understand and that make it a game that they get to turn the thermostat down at 5 o'clock in the evening, or they get to turn it down before going to bed at night, or some sort of a routine to really sort of pass on the knowledge that we're talking about here today, so that that the generations to come can benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of already been said, but I guess the first part of understanding any problem is to educating yourself what that problem could be. So understanding your home energy consumption, when and where you use it, what uses a lot of energy, what you can and can do without. I think one of the programs that does exist, and the City of Nelson has it through the RDCK, the Greener Homes program offered it, was a home energy assessment. And part of the reason the federal government did that program was to help people understand where inefficiencies are in their home, and then how can they address those inefficiencies. So I think that's just a further step, is actually having a professional come in, assess your home, do the blower door test, do this, look for leaks, look for insulation, look for thermal dams, and say, hey, here's some things you can do to make your home more energy efficient, and then you can deal from there.
I would say put pressure on your local politicians and the local utilities to bring in more community solar projects. We find that there are a lot of properties that want to get solar in the BC region. It just doesn't make sense for them. They don't have the roof sloping the right way. They have beautiful trees surrounding their house, or they're up against a beautiful valley hill, and it just doesn't make financial sense for that person to get solar. Now, if they were able to buy into a Nelson type community solar garden, or some more of the community buildings that you could buy in a portion and get solar credits that way to help offset your usage, I think that'd be a fantastic thing to help in this area where we have more trees and mountains than other places in the country. So there's many places that do make a lot of sense for solar in the Kootenays. There's a lot of places that just doesn't make sense. And for us to have to be able to, we're turning people away who want to pay for solar, who we have to convince them it actually doesn't make sense for you. You should be putting your money into other, climate resiliency options. But if we have those community options there that everyone can take part of, whether you own your house or you have a house that's up in the mountains surrounded by trees.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen. Join me in a round of applause. And I'll hand it over to you, Jam. I just wanted to, again, we got Bruce, Scott, Jim, and Rick. Grab them. There's something we can all do. Each one of us can do something in our home. We can do something in our community. And if it's not clear right now what that is, then definitely pull them aside and pick their brain a little bit more. So thanks again, guys.
Perfect. Thanks to Rick. Yeah. And then, like you said, there's an engagement booth back there. You can deep dive with the speakers at any point. Give us your feedback through the Thought Exchange platform, or Rick will talk to you about this really, really neat AI platform that we've got cooking. And yeah, now we got Railtown and another panel. So stay tuned. The bass player has to go to another gig. Sorry. Give it up for Railtown. Ooh. Okay, awesome. We have another panel coming up here. Nicole. Yeah, other speakers, if you want to step up here.
Thanks, Jam. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Charlwood, BC Greens candidate in the upcoming provincial election. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I'd like to call up Don Scarlett. Hal Wright. There he is. Jaden Woodland. Do you see him, Jaden? And Mikhail Ivanchikov. I see you. Hi. Welcome to the stage, everybody. Are you Don? Hi, Don. Nice to meet you. I think this mic here works. If maybe you want to group around that mic, will that work? Oh, this one here. Okay. And it might be easier. Do you want to leave it in, or do you want to pass the mic to each other?
Well, what we were thinking is that we have a chance to talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah. So leave it there. Great.
Well, might as well as people choose, I guess.
Sure.
I could take it out, I guess.
It's up whatever you're comfortable with. Good. So first, we'll just start with you. Hey, Don. Don Scarlett, you're representing Micro Hydro. Is that the name of your business, or are you talking about it as a general topic?
Yeah, I am talking about it as a general.
And make sure you put it right up to your mouth, please, the mic.
Is that about right?
How is that for sound?
Does it have a switch?
Yeah, just be...
Sorry. Hello?
There you go.
Now it's working.
Thanks, Don. You go ahead.
Okay. I'm Don Scarlett. I live in Kaslo and have for 50 years. One of the things that I've been doing since 1990, that's 34 years ago, I decided that it was an interesting idea to get into the microhydro business, because I had seen some federal programs that were running at that time to encourage renewable energy. And I've never looked back since then. This is a wonderful area for microhydro. We have the combination of relatively high precipitation, although you wouldn't know it at times, but certainly we've got a lot of creeks coming down very steep mountainsides, and that's the ideal formula for microhydro that's practical in this area. If you were to draw a circle around Nelson that reached as far as Kaslo, but the circle that large, there are probably 100 microhydro power plants in that area. It's amazing how many there are. And that tells a whole story, because one of the attractive things about microhydro is they do not have a large footprint. You don't even know they're there. It's a pipeline that runs up through the woods to an intake alongside a creek in most cases. And the power plant can be quite small and still produce a very useful amount of energy. So it's the ideal way to produce energy in this area, very well suited to it, and it is also 24/7 and all through the year, winter and summer. It'll produce power for you the entire year.
the thing to keep in mind, I guess, is that somebody has to know how to do it, and somebody has to put up the money that it takes to build. But the first of all, the money side of it is not too unmanageable, because the payback for most of the microhydro projects that I've worked on in the last 35 years have been the payback has typically been a matter of about 5 years, and after that it's gravy, because you're generating useful and valuable energy forever at that point. Because if you use a typical poly pipe for the penstock, and the only work you have to do to maintain the system after that is grease the turbine bearings and so forth, and there's no reason why it wouldn't be working 50 years from now or even longer. The pipeline itself is essentially perpetual. And so the advantage, of course, besides financial, because you do essentially you're producing a valuable product which you can use yourself, is that it is long-lived, and it will be also a very small environmental footprint, one that makes it quite attractive. In an area like this, you know, we're accustomed to the idea of seeing long power lines coming from, say, down the power dams along the Columbia, coming up here to supply us with electricity. They lose a great deal of energy in those wires, getting it here. Years ago, Fortis BC said that it was losing about 7% of its energy in heating up the power lines, through basically resistance in the power lines. And I suspect that when we're talking about a rural line, one that feeds a place like Kaslo, the percentage is a lot higher than that, because they build only large enough to do the job, and a smaller wire would tend to heat up more. So generating power at this end saves that energy, because if I do generate power at my place at Fletcher Creek, and the energy that I produce goes about 200 meters in either direction. It goes to my neighbors and it feeds them. Fortis BC is obviously involved, because that's how it gets to the neighbors, but the point of the whole issue is that there's no loss, insignificant loss in the transmission for a short distance like that. And in fact, the more people who are generating power in an area like this, in a rural area, the better, because the whole area becomes more resilient. And that's a word that we need to know more about, and we need to respect it as much as we can, because resilience is what enables communities like ours to survive. The same thing applies, of course, to a lot of other rural areas. I certainly have worked on projects somewhat further away, up Trout Lake and so forth. I've been working and I'm working on one south of Rossland right now. But the general idea is that generating power from microhydro is pretty straightforward. It involves water pressure, and water keeps flowing as long as you are sizing your plant to the size of the available water in a creek. And it's relatively easy to do. There is an expense in building it. The payback is very good. And with net metering, which Fortis permits, and so does BC Hydro, then you also can have the advantage of offsetting most, if not all, of your power bill during the entire year. So I'll stop at this point, because I think I'm probably approaching 5 minutes, but perhaps there'll be a time to add details if people have questions.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. I really appreciate that. And that efficiency piece is important. I've heard up to 15% energy gets lost just in the transmission. So there's definitely an efficiency question there. Thanks, Don. And now Hal Wright of Sandon. If you could introduce yourself, please. Let us know about your project. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, Nicole. And yes, I am Hal Wright from Sandon. Has anybody been to Sandon? Has anybody been through the generating station there? Well, that's my turf and my passion. Our operation is a family-owned utility scale generating entity. The only one left. All the others have gone extinct in British Columbia. 3 other family-owned producers have been taken down by the government via BC Hydro within the last 5 years. And it was simply canceling their existence, even at a time when we need more power. So anyway, we probably would have been taken down as well, other than our operation is 127 years. That's 127 years, 24/7. And it's in the World Hydro Hall of Fame, known around the world. And it's a little bit more difficult for the government to take us down without a major political upheaval. And so I'm going to bring a slightly different perspective to this discussion, and I would welcome anybody to come and talk to me after. Obviously, come out and see our operation. It's world class. And but I'm going to. And I wanted to say, one of my heroes is Don Scarlett that just spoke here. I also really admire the City of Nelson for hanging in there and keeping their ownership of their utility. They're the only ones in the province that were resistant to being absorbed by the big centralized model that was popular after World War II. And now progressive places in the world are moving toward decentralization. And that's a very necessary thing if we want to resolve these problems. My frustration is that I've been in this game for far too long, and I see so much disinformation out there. It's saddening because it only slows the transition that we have to make here. And I would say that the primary barrier to resolving these energy reliability issues is political. In fact, almost all of our issues are political. And so I may be the rebel here and put it out there, but we really have to change the way that we're managing our electricity resources in this province unless we want to fall into the trap that we've been building since World War II. And if you want to look at an example of what happens to a country when your reliability is on a centralized monopoly and a centralized system, just look to Ukraine. How do you take a nation down the fastest way and leave them crippled? Nothing works anymore when the power goes off. So that's a lot of what I want to pass along in terms of a message, but I want to keep it light and fun too. What's worse than a monopoly? Anybody? Come on. A government-owned monopoly. Because they write their own rules and they aren't necessarily for your benefit. So that's one of the things that I would like to see change a lot in this province, is just the way that the electricity is managed. You look at a place like Kaslo, at one time, like most communities in this province, was electricity self-sufficient. Kaslo had its own power generating plant until 1962. And then it was taken over and demolished and made way for the bigger, better centralized model. Well, is it bigger and better? I think it would be great if there were a number of power plants similar to the one that we have at home generating power. It would certainly make the reliability of the electricity in this area greatly different than it is. And some things never change. I guess the value of being involved in something historical is that, 127 years ago, Nikola Tesla was developing his technology and things were advancing there. But nothing has changed in the sense that today the competition for different technologies and methods and who controls what, and it's the corporate influence, it's the military, it's the government, it's the big players. It's all about monopoly, and so you can be persuaded to do some things that are not very effective. Why is water power on a local level not more talked about in British Columbia? Because they don't want to share it. Anyway, I've probably said lots.
Thanks, Hal.
And happy to chat later.
Good job. Thanks. Yeah, bring back independent power projects, IPPs. That was a big debate many years ago, and we'll definitely get that back on the agenda by doing this. Next, I'd like to introduce Jaden Woodland. He's from Turbulent. Could you come up here and introduce yourself and tell us about your work, please?
Hi there. I'm definitely not from Turbulent.
Oh.
I've just been introduced to them recently, and
Okay.
I've been in talks with them about the possibility of using their technology here. They are pretty cool. It's old technology used in kind of a new way, and I'm more here to geek out about possibilities of how, and I'm kind of noticing a theme that we all seem to have this leaning towards some form of decentralized power generation. And I like to think of it as like a mycelium network, and if every creek had a non-invasive system on it and we could all contribute to a main trunk or something, I think it could be a very different world. So I agree with the last speaker on that. So I will be talking about Turbulent, but first I would just like to give a little introduction and talk about some of the differences of power generation. So first of all, Don Scarlett is the one who trained me, and he's kind of one of the, what I would consider the grandpappy of microhydro in the Kootenays. One of them. I mean, obviously the history goes back further as we've heard, but he's done so much work over the years. And in fact, the property where I live now is the first microhydro system that Don ever installed. It was 37 years ago, I think. 34 years ago. Okay, so I'm exaggerating, sorry. 34 years ago, and still generating power, and that's what we're not on grid at all. So it's pretty fantastic. I notice a lot of focus, and we all probably have, about solar in around the world, how well it functions, and a lot of government rebates and pushes to install solar. And I think it's a beautiful concept. However, I guess I'm here in a way to advocate for water over sun for power generation for two reasons. One is that the sun is not always there. So we need storage. We need batteries to use electricity at nighttime, whereas water is 24/7. And then the other thing, of course, is the real longevity of the panels and the impacts of mining for batteries. So with those things in consideration, I feel like the creeks in this area is our biggest power potential, and I really do see a future where we have decentralized power for at least our region, if not bigger areas. Okay, so Don mentioned microhydro, and he talked about head pressure. So that's where you have an intake up high on the mountain, and the more drop you can achieve, the more potential power you can produce. Of course, more water also. So that's pressure. You have quick rotation, and and it's a lot of infrastructure. The other type of hydro turbine that's quite popular for microhydro is called a flow turbine, and it's slow moving, and it operates on the passage or movement of water, generally about 1 meter per second, or in the case of Turbulent, 1.5 meters per second, and they need 1.5 meters cubed of quantity of water. So it's not a small creek. You kind of need a big amount of water. But their smallest units are 15 kilowatts, and they go up to about 70, or I think in Kenya they just did one that was 110 kilowatts. And the concept is basically to create a small vortex. So if you imagine, maybe if you see Braden over there in the Sasquatch shirt, wave Braden, it could be as close as this. Depending on your vertical drop, you need about 1.5 meters of head, so probably not much above my feet. If you can get that much drop, then that's enough to get this vortex created. And if you were to look down, it would look like a snail. So imagine a snail shell with the big end upriver, and the water goes in and spirals and makes a vortex, and then you have the turbine right at the bottom of the whirlpool, and then you have a tailings, a tail race where it comes out and puts the water back into the creek. So it could be as short as from Braden to I, where we take the water out and we put it back in and generate more than enough power for at least a couple of homes, maybe a home and a big greenhouse and a shop or something. You know, it can be pretty active. One of the other beauties to microhydro over solar is that microhydro, you're almost incentivized to use power. You're not really thinking about turning off your lights or not using any electricity, because it's just going to a dump load anyways. With microhydro, you have to consistently use 100% of your generation. It's got to go somewhere. So there's all that, in a sense, not waste, but that energy availability, and there's lots of ways to be creative with how to use that excess energy. Yeah, I think that's about it for me. If there's any questions about Turbulent, you can look it up, turbulent.de, I think, perhaps. Check that. I'm not 100%, or ask me afterwards, and I'm happy to talk about it. I love this stuff. Thanks.
Thanks, Jaden. Yeah, I found interesting. You're sort of pitting solar against hydro, and I no, I'm just teasing you, kind of. But I do think it's worth noting that if we're going to local energy, a diversity of energy inputs and options is really the solution. I don't think, and I think this is where it's become political, and it shouldn't be, is that we try to pick that one thing that's going to be the successful thing that we're all going to jump behind. And really, if we're going to maximize our capacity to generate our own local energy, that there's a mix. And when I worked for the West Kootenay Eco Society, we were advocating for 100% renewable energy, and they still are in the West Kootenays by 2050. And our mix that we did research on involved 7 different types of energy generation. So there's lots of choice, and we're not picking right now, right? So finally, we'll have Mikhail, please, from Dandelion Renewables. Let's hear from you. Who are you, and what do you have to offer to the conversation? Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Nicole. Yeah, so I'll start with introducing myself, then the company, and I guess talk about some of latest projects that we've been working on. So my name is Mikhail. I grew up and raised in Russia, and mathematician by background, and been doing in Russia nuclear safety assessments of nuclear power plants. And then in 2000, moved to New York and worked at Wall Street for about a couple of years, doing financial risk analysis. And then went to Alberta in 2001. EPCOR and Capital Power brought me in to do business development for large-scale wind farms, as well as doing risk management. So my role was to finding the projects, presenting to the board of directors until the capital is committed. And I got the bug of renewable energy at that point. So, I really understand the kind of the shift in terms of climate change, in terms of, environmental benefits that are absolutely essential for us to start changing the way how we're generating energy. And in 2011, started our own company, Dandelion Renewables, that I co-founded and run it since then for 14 years. So that's about me. In terms of company and in terms of the agenda here, I really want to support independent power producers and give them as much power and empower them to actually go and make first steps and look at the options, all options that's available right now. And we have abandoned options because of the beautiful location in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. They have a lot of abundance of renewable energy, including hydro as well. Through existence of Dandelion Renewables, we've been through all sorts of different projects. We've been started actually doing energy efficiency for the Alberta agricultural sector, where we looked at all the ways to help economically be more sustainable, more resilient. And I'm a very strong believer that there is intersection between the projects being economically feasible, environmentally sustainable, and beneficial for the client in terms of giving them the freedom, to actually, do something. Like energy is one of the things, right? Growing the food, producing your own energy, just being yourself as an entity, not dependent on the government and other, infrastructure. That's a, very empowering thing that I'm very blessed that I think I, was able to help and bring this to this world. So after energy efficiency projects, we realized that solar has really good economics, unlike the wind, which I spent 11 years doing on the large scale. So the solar on the smaller scale and distributed energy makes really good economic sense. So we start presenting financial results to commercial clients, to municipalities. I can brag that Dandelion Renewables brought 5 municipalities in Alberta to be net zero, still connected to the grid, but generating as much solar energy as they consume for all municipal buildings. And so we've been very successful doing solar installations. We started playing with energy storage about 10 years ago with lithium iron phosphate batteries, testing them, programming for different inverters. I think we have one of the most cost-effective right now solution for the microgrids for energy storage as well. Most of the systems, good portion of the systems that we do with hybrid technology, which allows to be in the future converted to take energy storage seamlessly. And one of the last project that I'm very excited to work on is that shift towards transportation. So we, I think, gonna see more electrical vehicles, deployment of electrical vehicles on the road. Certainly, you can see it when you drive to Vancouver areas, and more to come. And what we're interested to do, when we're talking about the lack of capacity and how utility companies can solve this problem, we purchased land on Trans-Canada Highway, we built trackable solar with single access, and we installed 2 fast EV charging stations, and we deployed analytics that allows to change the capacity of the charging station depending how much solar is available. So that approach is actually transferable to utility companies, where if we do go with our ambitious plans to change the method of transportation to more environmentally friendly, then there will be need to smartly use the capacity of the batteries that the electrical vehicle charging provides. So it could be on a residential level, where there will be time of the day premium in terms of when do you charge the electrical vehicle, and could solve lots of problems, I think, across the province for the peak capacity availability. So that's kind of one of the last projects that we've been working, and we constantly push an envelope, if you like. We're just trying to do different things, and we try to not use the clients as a piggyback. We actually, we purchase the land, we actually invest our own money to do the projects that we believe in before we actually roll it to consumers, to utilities, to municipalities, to our clients. And maybe a little bit currently to close off is that when I moved to Kootenay, so I'm in construction of the house that I kind of designed, and the whole idea is that test out on myself different energy conservation approaches, like storing not electricity but storing the heat. I'm basically playing around my own place and really having a lot of fun with it. So it's I live fully off grid, and I'm really inspired to share my knowledge and my findings when it's going to be finalized with more people like you, so you can make educated choices and choose the energy and be free as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mikhail. Maybe we could have everybody come on up and share. Maybe take the mic off the stand. I'll ask. I think I have time maybe for one question. Keep it going. Okay, I have a couple questions then. Okay, why don't we start with, so the first group talked about what can individuals do. They can get educated, they can figure out their current. I'm curious, we're talking about independent power projects, but how can we be more collaborative in our communities? What experience do you gentlemen have in the projects you've done where you've seen groups of people, maybe a municipality, come together and work together to accomplish what we're talking about for a small community? If you could give us an example, a lesson learned. You don't all need to do a big talk about it, but maybe just something that we could pick up on here as users that don't have the experience that you do.
I'll begin if you like. And
thanks, Don.
One of the things that I've had a great deal of interest in is the possibility of keeping or reviving, I guess I'd have to put it, a local hydro project, micro hydro project, or it's actually getting to be fairly good size, somewhere around 200 kilowatts at Woodbury Creek. This is a project that was working, but it is in mothballs right now because of two things. One is that there was a flood that did some damage to it, but the other more important part is that the price that the builder of it was able to get for that for the electricity he generated was so low, something in the range of about 3 cents per kilowatt hour. It may be a little higher now, but it's certainly nowhere near the 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour that you and I are all would otherwise be paying. So there needs to be a little bit of thought given to a situation where a perfectly good hydro plant that could generate power could be operating right now, but because of the monopoly situation and because of the way decisions get made politically, we just don't have the opportunity to see a plant like that even be revived, let alone be built in the first place. And I'll just make one last comment, and that is that there are other people besides the utilities who can generate electricity. The city of Nelson can generate its own electricity, for example. The regional district of Central Kootenay could generate its own electricity, buy and sell electricity, and so could the municipality of Kaslo. However, you can imagine that this would not be an easy thing to put across, but that is something, that is a case where perhaps some of the local municipalities, because the regional district is a municipality as well, could be involved in renewable energy in a very beneficial way.
Thanks, Don. Hal.
Hi. Thanks, Nicole. A good question to ask, and the part about education is fundamental. So, how many of you, in all of the discussions that have been going on over the past decade, have ever heard hydro mentioned in renewables? We hear about solar and wind all the time, sometimes geothermal, but almost the oldest of all and most proven technologies is barely mentioned and often forgotten. And so, one of the things in everybody coming up to speed to understand what's good for your own situation and your community is understanding some of the differences. Now, large-scale hydro involving storage dams is one animal entirely different than other forms of hydro. And I want to make it really clear that small to medium hydro does not require dams, doesn't have to interrupt a river, it doesn't have to impact fish. So we're talking two entirely different technologies, but they're often assumed to be one and the same. And most of us, let's face it, when we think of hydro, we think of the Grand Coulee Dam. But that's not what would work well here in the West Kootenay. We have potential on a very large scale to develop a lot of really green hydropower, and these would be involving a number of locations. Would have to be locally managed, and that could be through co-ops, family ownership. Like Don says, it could be municipal. There's all kinds of models, but they're all operations that could not possibly survive under a top-heavy management like BC Hydro. They're good at running big dams, and they pay the big bonuses and salaries, but they do not know how to manage operations like a plant here in Kaslo, for example. So in terms of other municipalities, I've worked a lot with the village councils and mayors of two Kootenay towns here in Nakusp and Slocan specifically, who both want really to do some of their own hydroelectric developments. They want to benefit by it too. They don't want to give that all away to the province, and they'd like to employ local people in producing their own energy. And energy self-sufficiency has been a political goal of many parties over many years, but it's been forgotten by some of the ones that used to preach it. Anyway, they're stymied because they have tried everything to do that, and BC Hydro, or you might as well say BC government, has blocked them at every step, and so there needs to be political changes there if these things are to materialize. But education. The deception that is out there today is no different than when Edison and those guys were at it. You have to sort the fact from the fiction in order to make good decisions. But water power should not be forgotten in the conversation like it has been in recent years. It's the best potential that this particular climate and this particular region has. And the other point I want to make is that, and to echo what you said, there is no one solution for the world's energy problems. It's site specific, and it's different everywhere you go. And nobody would question the ignorance of building a hydroelectric plant in a desert. But we oftentimes are persuaded to do things in places that make no sense at all, other technologies. And undoubtedly Arizona is a great place for solar and so forth. But there are opportunities here for all these technologies, but we should keep them in the right context.
Thanks, Hal. I think Mikhail. Yep.
Yeah, I more than agree with that. I think one of the big thing is education, right? So if we can have more events like this, guys, woohoo! Yeah. So and but each household, regardless of the financial situation or anything, certainly being educated and understanding where the energy comes from. Lots of people in the world, I guess, don't know where a potato comes from, and I think this Northern American society maybe don't have a great understanding about on the household level, where the energy actually comes and what the challenges are. If we can come across that bridge in terms of educating people what is actually challenging, why Nelson Hydro is struggling, why the BC Hydro is struggling, right? So what's their challenges? And we can pass it to the household, so we will work as a kind of one system. It maybe system required, maybe not. Maybe clients would or households decides to go completely energy sufficient, as this hydro panel suggests. It's totally possible, right? With a little bit of energy storage potentially, and it can be completely be sustainable and off grid. So I think the choices that just basically to present all the choices that household can have, and it could be energy conservation, it could be what energy options is available. I think that's big thing that, or just even like, if you see the neighbor done solar project or hydro project, just go and ask all the questions, just educate yourself, educate your kids. And then I think through that process, we can be much more sustainable as the society.
Thank you. Jaden, did you have a comment?
Yeah.
Great.
I would like to encourage everyone to participate at their local level. And I think to dovetail on and to agree with the educational component, but I know it's really hard for any of us to put too much time in researching things and then sharing that information. Excuse me. But if we have a direct application, so my request of you is, if you live on a creek, or if you have a neighbor on a creek, if you have a water license, or if you know people with water licenses, start doing your research. Find out all the stakeholders on that creek. Find out all the people that have a vested interest in that water supply, and talk to some electricians, or do some research on microhydro, and find out if maybe it's viable. And then maybe just talk to your neighbors a bit and be like, hey, have you ever thought about if we could all team up and make some power off our creek? The more people that you have that hold water licenses that want to cooperate, I mean, I'm sure these guys that could all talk about the challenges inherent in this, but it's a beautiful potential. And I think that the more that we can encourage power generation locally, the better off our region will be.
Thanks, Jaden. Do I still have a little more time? It's up to me. I'm going then. Okay, one more question. We've talked about political will, and that there doesn't seem to be a lot of it there for microhydro. What can policymakers do differently? Mikhail, I've already asked you this question, so maybe you should go first just to give the others. But are there barriers that you're running into? Local government, I'd rather not focus on local government because I think they've already got one arm tied behind their backs, but I'm biased, obviously, so I will let you pick
it's very interesting
how to talk about it.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Nicole. So I actually, through many technologies, renewable energy technologies that I had dealt with, the hydro is the one that I have the least experience. So I will let this panel to talk about what barriers they experience on the hydro level. But from political perspective, I think what's important to see is that politicians and policies don't stand in the way to actually allow technology progress and economics to just pass its own way. I think, that's my perspective. If we don't have a policy that favors one technology, solar or hydro, versus another one, and just let economics and technology driving that, I think that's how it's supposed to be. And I also, guys, encourage you, if your property has any sunlight, so I would encourage you to reach out to solar producers too. I'm joking.
No, you're not.
Really, the issue of what can be done by small municipalities in an area like this tends to be constrained by habit and by the fact that the general excuses we feel we're too small, perhaps, to undertake major projects and so forth. But there are ways of collaborating with other investors who would like to see the right thing done, and where the municipality believes in it as well. So I'm confident that in time we could see our municipalities get involved in the energy business, because it would be good for their citizens, it would be financially beneficial, and of course it would also be good for the environment in the sense of reducing wasted energy being transmitted all this distance, and even to the extent that it could be part of the solution of preventing outages that we have that are way down the line somewhere else. That's a bit trickier, but let's just say even that should be on the table as something that could be addressed.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don. So many of the challenges are at the provincial level, and one of the things that currently goes on, the agenda that the provincial government is following is not necessarily what they're telling you. The reason that they like big hydro dams is because stored water is the only large-scale battery that human technology possesses. And instantly you can open the gates on a dam and release as many megawatts of power as the plant is capable of instantaneously. Other technologies need time to ramp up and ramp down, anything involving heat, for example. So as long as they can monopolize the big storage reservoirs, they kind of own the market. And the advantage of a storage dam economically is that they can sell the power when the prices are high. So you can save it during the non-peak hours, and you can let it all go and flood it in peak hours. So there's that aspect to it which they don't want to admit to, because from an environmental point of view that's not particularly good, and really neither are dams. So like the constraints that the province is putting on producers are by manipulating the electricity market. If you think of electricity as a market commodity, which it is, but it's unlike any other. It's largely based on manipulation rather than actual reasonable facts. So, you know, for example, if you're a copper mine and you're producing copper, the price you're going to receive is going to be the same as most other copper mines. It might be a price based on quality, like a copper number 1, number 2, number 3, but basically the same market value, or gold, or let's say wheat or fish, doesn't matter. Those commodities tend to, a price is established and the market follows. And if you can do it competitively for that, you're in the game. And if you're outside of it, you aren't. But that has, supply and demand has really nothing to do with the electricity market. It's so manipulated by government that, you know, none of the norms apply. So for example, when these contracts are issued to independent power producers by BC Hydro over the past many years, there isn't a set price. It's not like we're all going in there saying, okay, well, you know, wholesale electricity is 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Can we do it or we can't? No, the deals are all done in secrecy. They're all unilateral. They're bound by confidentiality clauses, and they're all over the map. And so how does that work? It doesn't work well unless you're connected politically. So our operation has typically received about $20 a megawatt hour for the past 20 years. But that would mean you know, 700% difference between what you're paying for your electricity. So the spread between wholesale and retail is far too great, and that's something the government should be totally involved with, ensuring that fairness is across the board. And if you're a producer in Kaslo, you should be receiving fundamentally the same prices you would be in Nelson, give or take a few reasonable variables. But those are the things that are behind the scenes that are unfair, that hopefully there's a political solution for. Get away from these secret contracts and secret deals, and have a transparent pricing and a fair markup, not hundreds of percent. Yeah.
Thanks, Hal. Yeah, and you didn't mention there's an international agreement that also is at play here for for the province, and so having local power production can pull us out of that restraint as well, which is important. Jaden, you have final comment on this question.
Thank you. Yeah, I just really want to offer a little bit of bolster to exactly what you're saying right there, and continuation of this notion that I think many of us in many different regards have quite a large awareness around all the challenges and bureaucratic headaches and obstacles. I believe personally that the grass kind of roots movement, or that the local power production, is really our best bet to changing the bigger scale power production, because it's beyond David and Goliath. Like, these people, it's a system, it's an institution. And for us to try and write letters or protest or something and have any real discernible effect on that, I feel is kind of maybe not a lost cause, but pretty near. However, if we, all of us, start activating every creek and start generating our own power, then that is the best education available, because when you're involved with an action or an activity and you have to learn about it, then you're invested in it, then you're a part of it, and then you're aware of it, and then on the public scale in politics, it suddenly has a lot more weight and a lot more meaning because a bunch of us are invested in it. Whereas right now, a few of us types can stand up and go, hey guys, we could do power way better, and people are like, yeah, my toaster works, it's fine. So I just want to encourage us all to be active in considering how we generate our own energy, and while we're at it, food and clean water and stuff. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's a great way to end this. Thanks to all of you for joining us for this conversation. It's been stimulating for me. I know I was very excited to hear what you had to say. Thanks everybody for being here and listening. I would like to throw in one more pitch, being the politician in the room. You do have your vote. Votes are cheap, and you can influence government. This is one really hot topic, I think, that could come up in local, provincial, federal elections. So don't give up on your institutions. We can do better. And so get out and vote. But thank you so much. Thanks for organizing this. Jean-Marc, here you go.
Merci beaucoup, Nicole. Yeah. Right now, and thanks to all the speakers that are here the whole night. That was awesome. Didn't you love it? Woo! Thanks everybody on the live stream. All of this content is going to the Kootenay Mountain Culture, and we're using some really cool platforms this year to synthesize a lot of this engagement and posting it as stories on Kootenay Mountain Culture, as well as the videos. We'll be showing you the Thought Exchange. So when you get to the Thought Exchange link, make sure you click into it and deep dive onto the questions that you need to answer to get towards energy security and ultimately community resilience. So thanks so much. Next show is August 24th. It's the housing highlights. It's going to be fun. Check it out online at Kootenay Mountain Culture. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Thanks to Dave Ronald from All Ears Production, and to Ernst for all these awesome, beautiful plants here, and to Brian at the Niche, and to my partners near and far, all the speakers here. Thank you.